Hello friends, welcome to a lecture on endemic and endangered species of India. The main objectives of today's presentation are to explain the meaning and types of endemism, to define what are the various threat categories, to explain the meaning and causes of endangered species, and to describe the Indian scenario of the endemic and endangered species. To begin with, let me give you a brief background of what we are going to discuss. India is one of the 12 megadiversity countries of the world. India occupies only 2.4% of the world's land area, but its contribution to the world's biodiversity is approximately 8% of the total number of species. However, the elements of biodiversity vary in their abundance and origin. Every plant species has its own particular distribution or range, which is dependent on its history, ability to migrate, and adaptability. Depending on their distribution and risk, taxa that are represented in proportionately smaller numbers as compared to global biodiversity are of two types: endemic species and threatened species. First of all, let us study the endemic species. Endemic species are those taxa whose distribution is confined to a restricted area due to their specific ecological niches and edaphic gradients. The habitats of the endemic species are far more vulnerable than other species. Endemic species once lost is a loss of biodiversity of those species forever. The examples of endemic species is orange-breasted sunbird, which is exclusively found in fynbos vegetation zone of southwestern South Africa. A species of suckerel which is endemic to Kaibab Plateau in Arizona. Correspondingly, endemism is the ecological state of being unique to a particular geographic location, such as a specific island, a habitat type, nation, or any other defined zone. To be endemic to a place or area means that it is found only in that part of the world and nowhere else. Appreciably, a high incidence of endemism is encountered in the oceanic islands such as Hawaii, Fiji, and Galapagos, etc. Endemic taxon may be of any rank, although it is usually at a family level or below, and its range of distribution may be wide, spanning an entire continent, or very narrow, covering only a few square meters. The range of a taxon varies according to its size, and obviously higher taxa such as families normally occupy very large areas and are widely distributed. If, however, a particular family has a distribution restricted to relatively smaller area, such as a single continent, it may be said to be endemic to that continent. Genera may show smaller areas of distribution and species still smaller. Certain species may be endemic to a very small area such as peak of a mountain. Evidently, smaller areas will have fewer endemic species, while the larger ones will tend to have relatively more endemics. There are two main types of endemics or endemism, as paleoendemics or paleoendemism, neoendemics or neoendemism. Paleoendemics are those old species whose range was once far more extensive than it is today, and which, being remnants or survivors of former species, may be called as relic endemics or epibiotics. And correspondingly, paleoendemism refers to a species that was formerly widespread but is now restricted to a smaller area. These are particularly abundant on ancient islands and mountain massifs. For example, New Zealand flora has as many as 72% of its species endemic to that region. Examples of the paleoendemics include sequoia, which we normally call as redwood, metasequoia of North America, ginkgo of China, Magnolitia and Toluma of Southeast Asia, and Endangered of Fiji Islands. Neo-endemics: when ecological conditions change within the limits of some natural region, there is a tendency of new forms to evolve. The new forms will show a smaller distributional range since they are physically unable to spread beyond their confines. Such species may be termed as neo-endemics. And correspondingly, neo-endemism refers to a species that has recently arisen, such as a species that has diverged and become isolated reproductively, or one that has formed following hybridization and is now classified as a separate species. This is a common process in plants, especially those which exhibit polyploidy. Other minor types of endemics are microendemics, those endemics which are at interspecific level; pseudoendemics, which are apparently mutants encountered in certain areas. Ecological endemics are those endemics which have arisen in relation to particular habitat condition. Local endemics, those endemics which are confined to a very limited area, such as small island or a mountain peak or so on. Endemism may be classified on the basis of quality and quantity, and accordingly endemism may be qualitative or quantitative. Two floras, for instance, may well have the same percentage of endemic taxa, but in one of these the endemics may be closely related to each other and differ from the non-endemics, while in the other they may be very different from other taxa in flora. The endemism in later flora may clearly express a higher degree of distinctiveness and better quality of endemism. Now, the reasons for the occurrence of areas of high levels of endemism. The first is the unusual environmental conditions. These may select for independent evolution of local adaptations that enable the species to persist under these conditions but prevent them from occurring more wildly. And another main reason is the isolation, that is the separation either by distance or other barriers of individuals from conspecifics enables independent evolution that may give rise to endemic taxa. So, endemics are especially likely to develop on islands because of their geographical isolation. The last reason and the most important is the historical. Changing environmental conditions, both biotic and abiotic, can constrain previously more widespread species to a limited area. On continents, higher levels of endemism may particularly be associated with areas that have been exhibited long-term ecoclimatic stability, enabling the populations to survive periods of major global climatic change. Such areas may also be evolutionary hotspots in which multiple evolutionary events have occurred over a significant period. Now, the second part of the presentation, threatened species. A threatened species is the one which is thought to be at significant risk of extinction in the foreseeable future because of the deterministic factors affecting its population or by virtue of inherent rarity. The growth in public awareness of the problem of depletion and possible extinction of species is largely attributed to the development of the Red Data Book, commonly written as RBD, concept by Sir Peter Scott during 1960s. This involves an attempt to categorize species at risk according to the severity of threats facing them and estimated imminence of their extinction. The Red Data books were compiled on global basis by World Conservation Union, formerly known as International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources, that's IUCN, so far as available information allowed, but the concept was soon adopted at a national level in many countries. As the volume of information increased, the traditional red data book approach, which included a publication of range of data on each threatened species, was replaced by direct listing of globally threatened species recognized by IUCN. The status of threat to each species in the red list is denoted by assigning it a threat category, and accordingly IUCN has recognized 9 red list categories of species, which include extinct, represented by EX. Species is extinct when there is no reasonable doubt that the last individual has died. Next category is extinct in wild, represented by EW. A species is extinct in wild when the exhaustive surveys in known or expected habitats have failed to record any individual. The next category is critically endangered, written as CR. Species is said to be critically endangered when it is facing an extremely high risk of extinction in wild in the immediate future. Next category, endangered, written as EN. Species is endangered when it is not critically endangered but is facing a high risk of extinction in wild in the near future. Next, vulnerable, written as VU. Species is said to be vulnerable when it is not endangered or critically endangered but is facing high risk of extinction in the medium term future. The next category is near threatened, written as NT. Species that do not qualify for critically endangered, endangered or vulnerable but are close to qualifying a threatened category in near future are said to be as near threatened. Then next category is least concern, written as LC. Species is lower risk when it has been evaluated and does not satisfy the criteria for critically endangered, endangered, vulnerable or near threatened. The next category is data deficient, written as DD. Species is data deficient when there is inadequate information to make a direct or indirect assessment of its risk of extinction. The next category is not evaluated. It is written as NE. Species is assigned as the category of not evaluated when it has not been assessed for aforementioned criteria. Now coming to the specific, that is the endangered species. Endangered species are those taxa which are in danger of extinction and whose survival is unlikely if the causal factors continue to operate. Taxa whose numbers have been reduced to a critical level or whose habitats have been so drastically reduced that they are deemed to be in immediate danger of extinction are referred as endangered species. Endemics can easily become threatened because of their restricted habitat and vulnerability to the actions of man, including the introduction of new organisms. The 2004 IUCN Red List is the most comprehensive assessment of the global conservation status of threatened plant and animal species. Based on assessment of 2004 IUCN Red List, there are 15,589 species, 7,266 of animals and 8,321 plants and 2 lichens listed as threatened. Of these, 2,866 are listed as critically endangered, which include 1,376 animals and 1,490 plants. Let us now come to the causes of species becoming endangered. The first and the main cause is the habitat loss or modification, which is often associated with habitat fragmentation due to pastoral development, cultivation and settlement, forestry operations and plantations, fire and pollution. Next cause is the overexploitation for commercial or subsistence reasons, including meat, fur, hides, collection of live animals for pet trade and plants for medicinal or horticultural trade. Accidental or deliberate introduction of exotic species which may compete with, prey on or hybridize with native species. Deliberate eradication of species considered to be pests or weeds resulting in the disturbance of the habitats. The next reason may be incidental take, particularly the drowning of aquatic reptiles and mammals in fishing nets. And the last reason may be diseases which include both exotic and endemic. Now coming to the endemic and endangered species in India. There are 47,000 species of plants and 89,000 species of animals found in India, which contribute about 8% of the reported total number of species globally. Among the 25 hotspots of the world, 2, that's Western Ghats and Eastern Himalaya, are found in India. These extend into neighboring countries also. These areas are rich in flowering plants, reptiles, amphibians, swallow-tailed butterflies and some mammals, and also show a high degree of endemism. Besides being an active center of evolution and rich diversity of flowering plants, the numerous primitive families as Magnoliaceae and Winteraceae and primitive genera of plants like Magnolia and Betula are found in eastern Himalayas. The Western Ghats region holds important population of Asian elephants and Indian tigers. India has many endemic plant and vertebrate species. As per the Botanical Survey of India 1983, among plant species, endemism is estimated at 33% with about 140 endemic genera but no endemic families. Indian region is also known for endemic fauna. For example, out of the recorded vertebrates, 53% freshwater fishes, 60% amphibians, 36% reptiles and 10% mammalian fauna are endemic. Areas rich in endemism are northeast India, the Western Ghats and the northwestern and eastern Himalayas. A small pocket of local endemism also occurs in eastern Ghats. The Gangetic plains are generally poor in endemics, while the Andaman and Nicobar Islands contribute at least to 220 species to the endemic flora of India. However, roughly 40% geographical area has remained underexplored with a potential to yield hundreds of new species. Say for example, as many as 250 new species of flowering plants have been described only from Kerala alone during the past quarter century. 4 endemic species of Western Ghats are lion-tailed macaque, Nilgiri leaf monkey, commonly called as Nilgiri langur, brown palm civet and Nilgiri tahar. Endemic amphibian genera of India include Indotyphlops, G. genophis, Ureotyphlops, Buphoides, Melanobatrachus, Ranexus, Nanobatrachus, Nicety-batrachus. Some endemic plants of India are Berberis, Aconitum, Impatiens, Inula, Sivertia, Lagots, Susuria and Euphorbia. Some endangered animal species of India are Malabar large spotted sever, Asian elephant, Asiatic black bear, Asiatic wild ass, Namdefa flying squirrel, loin-tailed macaque, Pyjama hog, red panda, black buck, wild yak, Indian rhinoceros. Some endangered plant species of India include Ilex cassiana, King Deodendron pinnatum, Myristica malabarica, Syzygium travancoricum, Madhuca dipostemon, Pterocarpus santalinus, Saraca escosa, Berberis nilgihirensis, Cupressus kashmiriana, Arnebia benthami, Atropa acuminata and Mecanopsis latifolia. To conclude, let us summarize some important points which we learned today. The endemic species are those species which are confined to any geographical region and are not found anywhere else. Endangered species are those species which will be facing the threat of extinction in near future if the present circumstances continue for some particular period of time. India is having high level of endemism, especially with respect to plants, reptiles and amphibians. Since the human activities have greatly accelerated the global rate of species extinction, Indian flora and fauna is also influenced by anthropogenic activities. With the result, a large number of species have been categorized as critically endangered or endangered, especially the endemic ones. That's all. Thank you.